Hey guys, it's Dodie. Today I'm going to teach you how to make old-fashioned fudge. This is a chocolate fudge recipe that my grandmother's had for years and years. She used to make it for us all the time when we grew up in the 70s and 80s. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well, and let's get started. All right, to make the fudge, you will need 2/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, 3 cups of granulated sugar, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, a cup of chopped pecans. I love nuts in my fudge, but if you don't, you can leave those out. 1.5 cups of whole milk and 1/4 cup of butter. You can do unsalted since we are adding salt, but I like salted butter in most of my recipes. And a teaspoon of vanilla. Then you'll also need to have a candy thermometer, and we have a large pot, and we have our plate that was passed down from my mom from the 70s. So that's what we call our fudge plate. All right, so one of the things I like to do to get prepared is to just take some extra butter, not part of the other butter, and I'm just gonna take the stick of butter, it's cold butter, and I'm just gonna rub it on this plate until it's nice and coated. And this gives it a non-stick coat so that when the fudge gets poured out, when it's really hot, it doesn't stick to the plate later when it dries. So I'm going to coat that really nicely with butter. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add in my sugar, all 3 cups, and my cocoa powder, the 2/3 cup, and my salt, and my milk. Again, that's 1.5 cups of whole milk. So I'm going to set all of this onto medium-low. And we're going to stir it, and we're going to keep stirring it and keep checking on it until it reaches 234 degrees. So that's why you'll need a candy thermometer or some way to measure the temperature. You don't want to get it scalding hot or it will burn on the bottom. You don't want to leave it alone too long or it'll start sticking to the bottom as well. So we're just going to stir this until it gets 234 degrees. Right, so my thermometer comes with a cover, as you can see. It even has one that says for fudge, which I think is funny. It says fudge is 240 degrees Fahrenheit. My recipe my grandmother's done has always been 234 degrees. So somewhere in between that is what we're gonna cook our fudge to. But really it's all about the look of it. So I'll take a look and see what the fudge is doing. If it does form kind of a soft ball stage, we'll check that here in just a little while. Okay, so the fudge is cooking nice and slow. This is a slow process. This is not a fast process. I have attached the thermometer. It has a little clip where you can attach it. I try not to set the bulb of it directly on the bottom of the pot. And as you can see, it's rising. It's not quite to 200 degrees Fahrenheit yet. And you can see here, it has a soft ball stage marked about where we're gonna target the blue line to hit. That's when it will be at a softball stage. So we're going to keep stirring. All right, guys, so it is bubbling away. The fudge is getting a little bit higher here in the pan, and it is just over 220 degrees now, so we're getting closer. But again, patience is key. You just keep stirring it. My burner is between low and medium, so it's not even all the way up to medium. If you have numbers, it's probably around a 3. So keep stirring. We'll see you back in a few minutes.
It smells delicious. You should like and subscribe.
All right, our mixture has come to a full rolling boil, so we can stop stirring and let that continue to get up to 234 degrees. We're getting closer. We're at 225 now. So we're getting closer and closer, and then we'll let it sit for just a minute once it's finished reaching the right temperature. Okay guys, so we are right there at 230 degrees. We are very close. It's about a 15-minute process so far, if I had to guess how much time it's taken. I didn't really start my clock to see for sure, but it's a slow process, so hang in there. Once this reaches the right temperature, we're going to turn off the stove, and I'm going to add 1/4 cup of butter and a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're just going to let that sit for a minute and let the fudge kind of cool down, and then we're going to stir it all in. So we'll be doing that in just a few minutes. Okay, so we have reached our soft ball stage. I'm going to put in the butter and the vanilla, turning off the heat. So we turn the heat off. As you can see, the vanilla likes to react with the hot fudge very quickly. So we've turned our heat off. We're going to let that sit for just a minute, and then we'll stir it in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stir in the vanilla and the butter. So as you can see, the butter has not melted all the way yet, but it will, and it's going to turn this very glossy. So the real key here is to keep an eye on this fudge as you stir. It's all about the right temperature to pour onto the plate. If you pour it too soon, the fudge will be very soft and kind of messy when you try to cut it. If you wait too long, the fudge will set very hard and be very hard to cut and almost be kind of powdery, dusty when you try to cut it later. So I am stirring this. The chocolate has deflated quite a lot in the pan now. It's gone down a lot. And the butter still has not melted all the way. As you can see, we still have a little bit left that we're stirring in. And it's going to go from a very glossy look. Once that butter gets all the way incorporated, it'll be very glossy. And just as it starts to lose the gloss, that's the time to pour it into the plate. So I don't have the right temperature for you. It's all about eyeballing it to see exactly when to pour. Right now, it's still very glossy. So we're going to keep stirring it and stirring it. And if you want to add the nuts, you'll add those in just as that butter gets melted. You can add in the nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and add my nuts in now. The butter's melted. This will help cool down the fudge a lot quicker too. Mostly because I store my pecans, my chopped pecans, I store them in the freezer, so they're pretty cold, but they have been sitting out for a little bit to get towards room temperature. But that'll help cool this fudge down very quickly. And right now it's still very glossy. So I'm waiting for it just to take that turn so we can pour it. It smells delicious. Okay. So as you can see, our fudge has a very glossy, shiny texture to it right now. Still very liquidy. It's not set up yet. So as it cools down and as you stir it, it'll start to set more. Okay, you guys, I think we're finally almost there. The fudge is getting thicker to stir. It's still glossy, but it's starting to just lose the glossiness when I stir it. So I'm going to go ahead and pour it on our plate. It's a very hot pan, so be very careful when you pour it. I'm just going to pour it starting in the middle, and it's going to work its way to the outer edge. Now, you don't have to have a specific fudge plate or anything like that. Any pan will do. I do recommend buttering it first so it doesn't stick later. But if you just have a Pyrex dish or something like that, you're welcome to use that as well. It doesn't have to be round, it can be square. So there's our fudge. We've got it plated up. The plate's going to be very hot as it sets. And we're going to let this set usually overnight before I try to cut it. But we're going to let it get nice and firm, and we're going to cut it tomorrow. I'm going to be careful to put it down so I don't spill it. This is our plate of fudge. So we're gonna let this set. It's still very hot and not set. And once it's set, we'll cut it and serve it up. But this is how we make our classic homemade Hershey's fudge. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes. The fudge has now set, so if I touch it, it is dry and it's not runny anymore. We're still gonna wait for it to set completely and cool completely before we cut it, but that is a perfect plate of fudge. What do you think, Alex?
Smells delicious.